Blood smelled different at 2:37 in the morning. 6 years working the graveyard shift at St. Catherine's Hospital had taught me that much. I could tell the difference between a car accident and a bar fight just by the way the automatic doors opened. Tonight, they opened wrong. 3 men entered in formation, moving like soldiers despite their civilian clothes. Dark jeans, leather jackets, boots that made no sound against the linoleum despite their weight. They carried the 4th man between them, his body sagging forward, head lolling. Blood soaked through his white dress shirt, spreading across his abdomen in a stain so dark it looked black under the emergency room lights. My training kicked in immediately. I grabbed a gurney, wheeling it toward them. My eyes swept over the group, cataloging details the way I'd been taught. All 3 men wore identical tactical boots. Military grade, reinforced toes, thick treads. Their jackets hung heavy on one side. Armed. "What happened?" I asked, keeping my voice steady as they transferred the injured man onto the gurney. His skin was cold against my hands, colder than it should be, even accounting for blood loss. "Accident," the oldest one said. He was maybe 45, graying hair cut military short, eyes that tracked my every movement. Fell onto some rebar at a construction site, punctured his stomach. I nodded, not believing a word. 6 years in emergency medicine meant I'd seen enough trauma to recognize violence. This was violence. The wound was clean, precise, made by a bullet, not a fall, and the edges weren't just torn. They were burned, powder residue darkening the flesh around the entry point. I wheeled the gurney toward Trauma Bay 2, the men following too closely. Normal family members hung back, gave medical staff room to work. These men crowded the space, watching my hands as I cut away the bloody shirt, their eyes following every instrument I reached for. "I need you to wait outside," I said firmly, pulling on latex gloves. "We're staying." The gray-haired man planted himself at the head of the gurney. "Hospital policy. Only medical personnel in the trauma bay during treatment. We're not leaving him." I pressed 2 fingers against the patient's neck, checking for a pulse. It was there, but slow. Too slow. His chest barely rose with each breath. Up close, I could see him clearly. Maybe 35 years old, dark hair matted with sweat, strong jawline, a vertical scar cutting through his right eyebrow. Even unconscious and bleeding, there was something commanding about him. "Jill?" I called out. My coworker appeared from the supply closet, blonde hair pulled into a practical ponytail. "I need vitals, stat." The gray-haired man leaned closer. "How many cameras are in here?" The question made my stomach drop. "What?" "Security cameras. How many?" I kept my focus on the wound, cleaning away blood to assess the damage. The bullet had gone deep, probably hit the stomach lining. "I don't know. 2, maybe 3. "Why are you asking?" "Just curious." His hand moved slightly, jacket falling open to reveal the holster underneath. My breath caught. These weren't worried friends or family. They were something else entirely. And the man on my gurney wasn't just another gunshot victim. The patient's eyes opened suddenly, startling me. They were dark brown, focused despite the blood loss. He looked directly at me, then past me to the gray-haired man. His lips moved, barely a whisper. "They're coming back," he said, his voice rough and strained. "Don't breathe loud or they'll hear you." I froze. The patient's hand moved slightly, fingers brushing against mine in what might have been accident or warning. His brown eyes held mine for 3 seconds, then closed again, as if consciousness was too much effort. "What did he say?" the gray-haired man demanded, moving around the gurney. "Nothing coherent. He's delirious from blood loss." My heart hammered against my ribs. I kept my hands busy, checking vitals, adjusting the IV line Jill had started. "Jill, get Dr. Morrison down here now." Jill ran. The emergency room doors burst open before she made it 10 feet. 4 more men entered, moving with the same military precision. But these weren't friends. I could tell by the way the 3 men around my gurney tensed, hands moving toward hidden weapons. "Vincent," one of the newcomers said, addressing the gray-haired man. "We tracked the blood trail from the warehouse. You need to move him now." "He's not stable," I said automatically. "He needs surgery." "No time." Vincent grabbed the gurney. "We're leaving." The patient's eyes opened again, finding mine. "They'll kill me," he breathed. "Please." The word hit me harder than it should have. Please. Not a command, not an expectation. A request from someone who had no right to ask but was asking anyway. I made a decision that would change everything. "Wait," I said. "There's a service elevator that goes to the basement. Old storage area. Been closed for years. If you're trying to avoid attention, that's your best option." Vincent studied my face for a long moment. "Why are you helping?" "Because people don't die in my ER if I can prevent it." I grabbed the gurney handles. "Follow me, quickly." We moved through the back corridors, away from the main emergency room. The patient drifted in and out of consciousness, his breathing shallow but steady. Vincent and one other man stayed with me. The rest disappeared, presumably to deal with the 4 men who'd been tracking them. The service elevator was hidden behind a maintenance door. I'd found it during my first year, sneaking down to the abandoned storage area when the stress got too much. Now it served a different purpose. We descended into darkness. The basement was exactly as I remembered. Concrete floors, old medical equipment covered in dust, air that smelled of mildew and forgotten things. I wheeled the gurney into what used to be a supply room. Doors still solid despite years of neglect. "I need gauze, antiseptic, anything you have," I said, already assessing the wound again. "The bullet needs to come out." Vincent handed me supplies from a duffel bag I hadn't noticed before. Professional medical equipment, the kind you didn't buy at a pharmacy. These men had been prepared for this. I worked quickly, extracting the bullet, cleaning the wound, stitching with steady hands despite the adrenaline flooding my system. The patient groaned but didn't wake fully. Good. Better he stayed unconscious for this. Footsteps echoed above us. Heavy boots on linoleum, moving systematically through the emergency room. Searching. Vincent put his hand over the patient's mouth, gesturing for me to freeze. We stood in absolute silence, barely breathing. The footsteps moved closer, directly above us now. Voices filtered through the old ventilation system. "He's not here. They must have moved him. Check every room, every closet. He's bleeding out. He can't have gone far." More footsteps. Doors opening and closing. The systematic sound of a thorough search. The patient's breathing quickened. Instinct recognizing danger even in unconsciousness. I placed my hand gently on his chest. A silent message. "Stay quiet. Stay still." Minutes stretched like hours. The footsteps eventually retreated. Voices fading. We waited 10 more minutes in darkness before Vincent finally exhaled. "They're gone," he said quietly. I realized I was shaking. "Who are you people?" Vincent looked at the man on the gurney, then back at me. "Someone you should forget you ever met." The patient's eyes opened one more time, finding mine in the dim light. "Thank you," he whispered. Then he was unconscious again, and I was left in a basement with 2 armed men and a gunshot victim, knowing that I'd just crossed a line I could never uncross. Dawn broke through the basement windows 12 hours after I'd hidden a bleeding stranger in an abandoned storage room. My shift ended at 6 a.m., and I went through the motions of finishing my rounds, documenting patient charts, avoiding eye contact with Dr. Morrison when he asked about the blood trail security had found near Trauma Bay 2. "Equipment malfunction," I lied smoothly. "IV line burst during a transfer. Maintenance already cleaned most of it." He accepted this without question. Night shifts bred exhaustion, and exhaustion bred incuriosity. I clocked out, grabbed my jacket from the staff locker, and took the service elevator back down to the basement before I could reconsider. The patient was awake when I entered the storage room. He sat propped against the concrete wall, one hand pressed against the bandages I'd wrapped around his abdomen. Vincent stood by the door, gun drawn, relaxing only when he recognized me. "You came back," the patient said. His voice was stronger now, no longer the pained whisper from last night. "I needed to check your vitals." I knelt beside him, pulling out the blood pressure cuff I'd stolen from the supply closet. "And bring antibiotics. That wound will get infected if we don't manage it properly." He watched me work with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. Up close, in better light, I could see the details I'd missed during the chaos. Dark brown eyes that analyzed everything. Tattoos covering his chest and arms, visible where his shirt had been cut away. The scar through his eyebrow was old, probably from childhood. He was objectively attractive, the kind of handsome that came with danger attached. "What's your name?" he asked. "Natalie Brooks." I wrapped the blood pressure cuff around his arm. "And you're someone important enough that men with guns hunt you through hospitals." "Adrian Blackwell." He said it like I should recognize the name. I didn't. "Should that mean something to me?" Vincent made a sound that might have been a laugh. "You really don't know." "Know what?" Adrian studied my face. "Better you don't. Safer that way." I finished checking his vitals, satisfied that he was stable. "Your blood pressure is low but improving. The bullet didn't hit any major organs, but you need real medical care. A hospital stay, imaging to make sure there's no internal bleeding I missed." "Can't do that," Adrian said simply. "Then you're risking sepsis, organ failure, death." "Still can't do that." I sat back on my heels, frustrated. "Why?" "Because the men hunting me have connections everywhere. Police, hospitals, morgues. If I check into any medical facility under my real name, I'm dead within hours. Then use a fake name. They'll find me anyway." Adrian pulled a phone from his pocket. The screen cracked but functional. "They have people watching every emergency room in the city. They know I was shot. They know I need medical attention. They're waiting." I thought about the 4 men who'd entered the ER last night, the systematic way they'd searched. Who are they? Competition. Adrian typed something on his phone. "I run an organization. They run a competing organization. Last night was supposed to be a peace negotiation. Turned out to be an ambush instead. Organization." The word was carefully chosen, deliberately vague. I wasn't stupid enough to miss what he wasn't saying. "You're talking about organized crime. I'm talking about business that operates outside traditional legal frameworks." Adrian's voice held no apology. "And before you ask, no, I'm not going to lie to you. You saved my life. You deserve honesty." Vincent shifted by the door. "Boss, we need to move. They'll expand the search radius soon." Adrian nodded, then winced at the movement. "Natalie, thank you for what you did. Vincent will leave cash to cover any trouble this causes you." "Forget you ever saw me." He tried to stand. His legs buckled immediately. I caught him before he hit the concrete, his weight solid against me. "You're not going anywhere," I said firmly. "You can barely walk, let alone run from whoever's hunting you." "I don't have a choice." "Yes, you do. You stay here. I'll bring supplies, monitor your recovery. This room has been abandoned for years. Nobody comes down here." Adrian looked at me like I'd suggested something insane. "You'd do that? Risk everything for a stranger?" "I'm a nurse. Risk comes with the job description." Vincent's phone buzzed. He checked it, his expression darkening. "Boss, we have a problem. Hale's people are at the nurses' station asking questions. They're showing your photo around." My blood went cold. "They're looking for me. They're looking for whoever helped Adrian disappear." Vincent showed me his phone. A grainy security camera image of me wheeling the gurney toward the service elevator. "They pulled this from hospital surveillance before I could scrub it." Adrian cursed quietly. "Natalie, you need to leave. Go home. Pack essentials. Get out of the city. I can't just leave. I have responsibilities." I thought of Lena, my 8-year-old niece who I'd been raising for the past 2 years. She'd already lost her mother to an overdose. She couldn't lose me too. "Then you're a target," Vincent said bluntly. "Graham Hale doesn't leave loose ends. If he thinks you know where Adrian is, he'll use you to find him." The walls of the storage room suddenly felt too close, the air too thin. 24 hours ago, my biggest concern was covering rent and Lena's school supplies. Now armed men were hunting me because I'd done my job. Adrian pulled himself upright despite obvious pain. "Vincent, I need protection detail on Natalie and her family. Immediate deployment. Already on it." Vincent was typing rapidly. "I'll have 2 men at her address within the hour." "I didn't ask for protection," I said. "You saved my life," Adrian replied. "That means I protect yours. Non-negotiable." Something in his tone told me arguing would be pointless. These weren't men who asked permission. They decided and acted. Consequences be damned. "I have a niece," I heard myself say. "Lena. She's 8. Lives with me full-time." Adrian's expression softened slightly. "Address?" I gave it. Vincent relayed the information to whoever was on the other end of his phone call. 2 guards will be positioned near your building and her school within 30 minutes, Vincent said. Discreet surveillance, no direct contact unless there's a threat. This is insane, I whispered. This is survival. Adrian met my eyes. Natalie, I need you to understand something. The men hunting me won't stop because you're innocent. They'll hurt you to get to me. They'll hurt your niece if they think it'll work. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm being honest about what we're dealing with. What do you want me to do? Go home. Act normal. If anyone asks about last night, tell them the truth up to a point. 4 men brought in a gunshot victim. There was a disturbance. You helped move the patient to safety. You don't know names. You don't know where they went. Will that work? Probably not, Adrian admitted. But it buys time. I stood on shaking legs. Vincent handed me a card with a phone number written on it. My direct line, he said. Anything unusual? Anyone following you? Any threat at all? You call immediately. I pocketed the card. How long does this last? Until we eliminate the threat, Adrian said. Could be days, could be weeks. I looked at him. Really looked at him. A man who commanded loyalty from armed soldiers, who spoke about elimination like discussing weather, who'd been shot and betrayed, but still had the presence of mind to protect a stranger who'd helped him. I need to check your wound again tonight, I said finally. Make sure infection hasn't set in. Adrian nodded slowly. I'll be here. I left through the service elevator, emerging into morning sunlight that felt too bright after the darkness below. My phone buzzed with messages from coworkers asking about the incident, from Dr. Morrison requesting a formal statement, from Lena's babysitter confirming pickup time. Normal life, trying to continue despite everything having changed. I drove home on autopilot, checking my rearview mirror more often than necessary. At every stoplight, I wondered if the car beside me contained men with guns and bad intentions. Paranoia, maybe, or realistic assessment of my new situation. My apartment building looked the same as always. Modest 2-story structure, 8 units total, small parking lot out front. But now I noticed the black sedan parked across the street. 2 men inside watching my building with professional disinterest. Adrian's guards. My protection. My prison. I climbed the stairs to my 2nd-floor unit, unlocked 3 separate locks, and stepped into the small space I'd called home for 6 years. 1 bedroom, tiny kitchen, living room barely big enough for a couch and television. Photos of Lena lined the bookshelf, documenting her growth from infant to the smiling 8-year-old she was now. My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Hello? Natalie Brooks? A man's voice. Unfamiliar. We need to talk about what happened at St. Catherine's Hospital last night. My hand tightened on the phone. Who is this? Someone who knows you helped Adrian Blackwell escape. Someone who wants to know where he is now. The line went dead before I could respond. I stood frozen in my apartment, knowing with absolute certainty that Vincent had been right. I wasn't just involved anymore. I was a target. 3 nights after hiding Adrian in the basement, Vincent appeared at my apartment with instructions that changed everything. He waited until I'd finished my shift, following me home at a discreet distance before knocking on my door at 7 a.m. We're moving him, Vincent said without preamble. Hospital security is expanding their investigation. Too risky to keep him there. I grabbed my medical bag, the one I'd been restocking with stolen supplies each shift. Where? Safe house across town. You'll need to come with us, monitor his recovery properly. I can't just disappear. I have shifts scheduled. Lena needs me. Vincent handed me an envelope. 2 weeks paid leave, medical emergency. Already cleared with your supervisor. Your niece will stay with the babysitter you trust. Full-time care, our expense. Guards will maintain rotation around her school and your babysitter's house. I opened the envelope. Official letterhead from St. Catherine's, signed by Dr. Morrison himself. Either Vincent had incredible forgiveness skills or connections I didn't want to know about. When? I asked. Now. We took separate cars to the hospital, entering through the service entrance I'd been using all week. Adrian was upright when we arrived, moving slowly, but moving. The wound had closed cleanly under my care. No signs of infection despite the less than sterile environment. You look better, I said, kneeling to check the bandages. I had a good nurse. Adrian's voice was stronger, color returning to his face. 5 days of rest and antibiotics had worked minor miracles. Vincent says you're coming with us. Someone needs to make sure you don't rip those stitches before they heal properly. We left through the basement loading dock, Vincent driving while Adrian and I sat in the back of a nondescript sedan with tinted windows. The city passed outside, familiar streets becoming unfamiliar as we drove into neighborhoods I rarely visited. The safe house was a third-floor apartment in a converted industrial building. Exposed brick walls, minimal furniture, windows covered with blackout curtains. 2 exits, one through the main door and another through a fire escape that led to the roof. The kind of place designed for quick departures. It's not much, Adrian said, watching me take in the space. It's secure. I set my medical bag on the kitchen counter. That's what matters. Over the next 5 days, we fell into an unexpected routine. I'd check Adrian's wound each morning and evening, changing bandages, monitoring for complications. Between medical checks, we existed in the strange limbo of forced proximity. 2 people who wouldn't normally occupy the same world, now sharing confined space. Adrian told me things I suspected he rarely shared. How his father had built the organization from nothing, establishing territory and respect through strategic alliances rather than indiscriminate violence. How Adrian had been 20 years old when his father was assassinated, thrust into leadership before he was ready. How he'd spent 15 years building something that operated by codes and rules, trying to minimize collateral damage in a business built on damage. People think organized crime is chaos, he said one evening, sitting on the couch while I cleaned his wound. It's not. It's structure, rules, hierarchy. Break the rules, face consequences. Everyone knows what they're getting into. Unless they don't, I countered, thinking of innocents caught in crossfire. That's why I have rules against civilian involvement. Anyone in my organization who harms someone outside the business faces immediate removal. Permanently. The way he said permanently left no room for interpretation. I told him about Lena, how my sister had struggled with addiction for years before overdosing when Lena was 6. How I'd fought for custody against my parents who wanted to raise her, but didn't understand how to handle the trauma of losing her mother. How I worked double shifts to afford the therapy Lena needed, the stability she deserved. She's everything, I admitted, securing fresh bandages. The reason I work so hard. The reason I can't risk anything happening to me. Adrian's expression shifted. Something I couldn't quite read. That's why I doubled the guard rotation around her. Vincent's best people, former military, specialized in protection details. You didn't need to do that. Yes, I did. You saved my life. That creates obligation. I was doing my job. You hid me from armed men, risked your career, and now you're living in a safe house taking care of someone you barely know. That's not just doing your job, Natalie. He was right, but I didn't want to examine why too closely. Easier to focus on practical concerns, medical necessities, anything except the growing awareness that Adrian Blackwell was more than just a patient requiring care. On the 5th day in the safe house, my phone rang. Unknown number, just like the threatening call I'd received at my apartment. I showed Adrian before answering. He nodded, signaling Vincent, who began tracing the call. Hello? I kept my voice steady. Natalie Brooks. Same male voice from before. You ignored my first call. That was rude. I don't know what you want from me. I want Adrian Blackwell. You know where he is. Tell me, and your niece stays safe. Ice flooded my veins. Don't you dare threaten her. I'm not threatening. I'm stating facts. Lena Brooks, 8 years old, attends Jefferson Elementary. Gets dropped off at 8:15 every morning, picked up at 3:30 every afternoon. Tuesdays and Thursdays she has soccer practice until 5 on. She's very good, by the way. Fast runner. My hand shook so violently I almost dropped the phone. Adrian moved closer, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from him despite the comfortable temperature of the apartment. You stay away from her, I managed. Then cooperate. Where is Adrian Blackwell? I don't know. They moved him after the hospital. I haven't seen him since. You're lying. I'm telling you what I know. He was moved. I wasn't told where. That's the truth. Silence on the other end. calculating. You have 48 hours to remember better. After that, accidents happen. Children are fragile. The line went dead. I stood frozen, phone still pressed to my ear, entire body shaking with rage and terror. Adrian gently took the phone from my hand. "Vincent, tell me you got something," he said quietly, dangerously. "Burner phone, bounced through 3 towers. He's somewhere in the industrial district, but that's a 20-block radius." Vincent looked grim. "This is Hale's work. He's using classic intimidation tactics. Then we respond appropriately." Adrian's voice had gone cold, stripped of the warmth I'd become accustomed to over 5 days. This was the man who ran an organization, who made decisions about removal and consequences. "I want Graham Hale to understand that threatening Natalie's family is a terminal mistake. Boss, you're not healed yet. You can't go into direct confrontation. I don't need to be healed to make phone calls." Adrian pulled out his own phone, dialing a number from memory. The conversation was brief, conducted in a tone that brooked no argument. When he finished, he looked at me. 4 additional guards around Lena, effective immediately. Former Secret Service, the best protection money can buy. They'll maintain distance, but they'll be watching. Anyone gets within 50 feet of her with bad intentions, they're neutralized. Neutralized, I repeated hollowly. Stopped, detained, removed as a threat. Adrian sat beside me on the couch, close but not touching. "Natalie, I know this is terrifying. I know you didn't ask for any of this, but I promise you, Lena will not be harmed. I stake everything on that promise." "Why?" The question burst out before I could stop it. "Why do you care this much? You don't know me. You don't owe me anything beyond basic gratitude." Adrian was quiet for a long moment. "My sister was 9 when she was killed, caught in an ambush meant for my father, 20 years ago. She was innocent, had nothing to do with the business, but she died because someone wanted to hurt my family. I swore that day I'd never let another child suffer for adult conflicts. So yes, I care. I care because Lena is 8 and innocent, and deserves to live without fear." The rawness in his voice told me this wasn't manipulation or strategy. This was genuine pain, old wounds that never fully healed. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. "Don't be sorry. Be angry. Use that anger. They threatened your family thinking it would make you weak. Show them it makes you dangerous." I looked at him. Really looked at him. The man who'd been shot and betrayed, but still found energy to protect a stranger's niece. Who spoke about violence with clinical detachment, but revealed grief when discussing his sister. Who was simultaneously the most dangerous and most trustworthy person I'd ever met. "What do we do now?" I asked. "We wait," Adrian said, "and we prepare. Hale made a move. Now we respond with something he can't ignore." Vincent cleared his throat. "Boss, we traced the leak. Know who told Hale about the meeting location?" Adrian's entire body tensed. "Who?" "Marcus, your accountant. Been feeding information for 3 months. Hale's paying him. Promised medical treatment for his brother's cancer." The silence that followed was absolute. Adrian stood slowly, carefully, favoring his healing wound. "Bring him in. I want to look him in the eye when he explains why he chose betrayal." I watched Adrian transform before me. The man who'd shared stories about his father becoming someone harder, colder, someone who could order Marcus brought in knowing full well what that meant. "What happens to him?" I asked. Adrian met my eyes. "That depends on whether he has a good explanation, but probably nothing he'll survive." The honesty should have frightened me. Instead, I found myself nodding. In 5 days, my moral compass had shifted in ways I was still processing. Marcus had betrayed Adrian, endangered everyone around him, including me and Lena by extension. Consequences seemed less like vengeance and more like inevitable mathematics. Night fell over the safe house. Outside, the city continued its normal rhythms, unaware of the conflicts playing out in hidden spaces. Inside, we waited for Marcus to arrive, for explanations that probably wouldn't matter, for decisions that would define what happened next. Adrian sat beside me on the couch, and I found myself grateful for his presence despite everything it represented. The 8th night after everything began, Vincent's phone buzzed with a message that changed his expression from calm to urgent in seconds. He showed Adrian the screen without a word. Adrian read it, cursed quietly, and stood with the kind of speed that suggested he'd forgotten about his healing wound. "They found us," he said. 15 minutes, maybe less. I grabbed my medical bag instinctively, though bandages wouldn't help against whatever was coming. How? Doesn't matter now. We move. Vincent was already at the door, checking the hallway with his weapon drawn. "Boss, we use the fire escape. Car's positioned 2 blocks east." "Natalie, stay close to me," Adrian said, pulling on a jacket that concealed the bandages still wrapped around his abdomen. "Do exactly what I say when I say it. Understand?" I nodded, throat too tight for words. We left through the fire escape, metal steps rattling under our weight as we descended. The night air was cold, autumn beginning its transition into winter. My breath created small clouds as we reached the ground level, emerging into an alley that smelled of old garbage and rain. Then the rain started. Not a gentle drizzle, but a torrential downpour that soaked through my jacket within seconds. Water streamed down my face, blurring my vision, making the already dark alley even harder to navigate. "This way," Vincent said, moving ahead to scout. Adrian kept his hand on my elbow, steadying me over uneven pavement. We'd made it maybe 50 feet when headlights swept across the alley entrance. A vehicle stopped, blocking our path. Doors opened. Men emerged, silhouettes backlit by high beams. "Go back," Vincent hissed, pushing us toward the opposite end of the alley. We ran. Or rather, Adrian and I ran while Vincent covered our retreat. Gunshots cracked behind us, shockingly loud even through the rain. I didn't look back. Adrian pulled me forward, his grip iron strong despite the fact that he'd been shot in this same spot 8 days ago. We burst out of the alley onto a side street lined with commercial buildings, all closed for the night. Vincent caught up, breathing hard. "They're circling around. We need cover." Adrian scanned the street, calculating. "There." He pointed to a narrow gap between 2 dumpsters behind what looked like a restaurant. "It's the only option." The space was barely wide enough for 1 person, let alone 2. But we squeezed into it, our bodies pressed together by necessity. The dumpsters reeked of rotting food, the smell made worse by rain washing new filth from their surfaces. I tried not to breathe too deeply. Adrian positioned himself in front of me, shielding me with his body. Vincent took up position at the alley entrance, weapon ready, watching for pursuit. Footsteps approached, heavy boots splashing through puddles, voices calling to each other over the sound of rain hammering against metal and concrete. "Check every hiding spot. He's wounded. He can't run far." "What about the woman?" "Hale wants her alive." "Leverage. Kill Blackwell. Bring her in." Adrian's hand moved to cover my mouth gently, his lips next to my ear. "Don't breathe," he whispered, barely audible over the downpour. "Or they'll hear you." I froze completely. Adrian's body was warm against mine despite the cold rain soaking us both. I could feel his heartbeat, steady and controlled, a rhythm I tried to match with my own breathing. Slow, shallow, silent. 3 men walked past our hiding spot, so close I could have reached out and touched them. Flashlight beams swept across the dumpsters, illuminating rust and graffiti, but somehow missing the gap where we stood pressed together like we were trying to merge into 1 person. 1 man stopped directly in front of our position. He pulled out a pack of cigarettes, swearing when he realized they were too wet to light. He tried anyway, cupping his hands around a lighter that sparked but wouldn't catch. "Forget it," another man called. "We're wasting time. They could be 3 blocks away by now." Hale said to search thoroughly. Hale isn't standing in a monsoon looking for ghosts. The man with the cigarettes shoved the pack back in his pocket. He stood there for another 30 seconds, close enough that I could smell the tobacco even through the garbage stench. Finally, he moved on, joining his companions at the end of the street. We waited. Rain continued its relentless assault, drumming against metal with a sound that felt like it would drive me insane if I had to listen much longer. Adrian kept his hand over my mouth, not restricting my breathing but reminding me to stay quiet. His other arm wrapped around my waist, holding me steady. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. The voices faded. Engines started somewhere in the distance. Tires splashed through flooding streets. Vincent appeared at the gap between dumpsters. "They're moving their search 2 blocks north. We have a window." Adrian released me slowly, his hand sliding away from my mouth. "You okay?" I nodded, not trusting my voice yet. We emerged from our hiding spot, soaked and shaking from a combination of cold and adrenaline. Vincent led us through a maze of back streets, avoiding main roads, moving with the kind of navigation that suggested he'd memorized every escape route in the city. The car was where he'd said it would be, a dark sedan with tinted windows parked in a residential area that looked too quiet for midnight. Vincent drove while Adrian and I sat in the back, dripping water onto leather seats. "Where are we going?" I asked when I finally found my voice. "Somewhere they won't think to look," Adrian said. He pulled off his soaked jacket, wincing slightly. "Natalie, I need you to check the stitches. That run might have pulled some loose." I shifted to examine his wound in the dim light from passing street lamps. The bandages were soaked through, useless now. I carefully peeled them away, relieved to find the stitches intact. The wound was healing well, pink new tissue replacing the angry red of inflammation. "You're lucky," I said, applying pressure with dry gauze from my bag. "Another week and these can come out." Lucky seems like a relative term tonight. I almost laughed. Almost. Fair point. We drove for an hour, leaving the city behind. Streetlights gave way to darkness, broken only by occasional farmhouses. Vincent finally turned onto a gravel road that led to a property surrounded by trees, isolated and defensible. "Safe house too," he said. "More secure than the apartment. 5-acre property, cameras on every approach. Nobody gets close without us knowing." The house itself was modest. Single story, maybe 3 bedrooms, wood exterior that looked well maintained despite the rural location. Inside was warm, furnished simply but comfortably. Someone had stocked the kitchen recently, the refrigerator full of food that suggested we'd be staying a while. "I'll take first watch," Vincent said, positioning himself by a window with a clear view of the access road. "You two dry off before you catch pneumonia." Adrian showed me to a bathroom with clean towels and a first aid kit that put my stolen supplies to shame. "Take your time. I'll make coffee." I stripped out of my wet clothes, hanging them over the shower rod to dry. My reflection in the mirror looked like a stranger. Haunted eyes, hair plastered to my skull, face pale with exhaustion. 8 days ago, I'd been a nurse worried about rent and parent-teacher conferences. Now, I was hiding in a rural safe house, soaked from running through rain, while armed men hunted me. The transformation should have terrified me more than it did. I dried off, wrapped myself in an oversized robe I found in the closet, and emerged to find Adrian in the kitchen brewing coffee like he'd promised. He'd changed into dry clothes, dark jeans, and a thermal shirt that outlined the tattoos I'd been seeing daily while changing his bandages. "Cream sugar?" he asked. "Both." He prepared 2 mugs, handing me one before leading us to the living room. We sat on opposite ends of the couch, the distance deliberate but feeling wrong somehow. We'd just spent time pressed together between dumpsters, breathing in sync, hearts beating against each other. Now we were pretending at normalcy with coffee and space between us. "What happened tonight?" Adrian said after a long silence. "That's going to keep happening until Hale is dealt with. He knows you helped me. He knows I'm protecting you. That makes you valuable to him as leverage. So what do? We eliminate the threat. Permanently." The word hung between us, clear in its implications. "You mean kill him?" "I mean remove him from the equation in whatever way ensures he stops being a problem." Adrian set his mug down. "Natalie, I know this isn't the world you signed up for, but you're in it now. The question is whether you can accept what that means." I thought about Lena, about the men who'd threatened her, about standing between dumpsters while people discussed killing Adrian and taking me alive. I thought about the choice that had started all of this, hiding a dying man because I couldn't watch someone bleed out on my watch. "I don't regret helping you," I said finally. Even knowing where it led, I'd make the same choice. Something shifted in Adrian's expression, walls dropping just slightly. "That's either very brave or very foolish." My therapist would say both. This time he did laugh, brief but genuine. "You see a therapist? Everyone should see a therapist. Life's complicated." Especially now. Especially now, I agreed. We finished our coffee in comfortable quiet, rain still pounding against windows, Vincent's silhouette visible against the glass as he maintained watch. Outside, somewhere in the darkness, men were still hunting us. Inside, we'd found temporary safety, temporary peace. Adrian stood, collecting our empty mugs. Get some sleep. Guest room is down the hall. I'll wake you if anything changes. I should have gone to bed. Should have rested while I could. Instead, I found myself asking, will you stay? Just for a bit? He looked at me for a long moment, then nodded, sitting back down on the couch. Closer this time, close enough that our shoulders almost touched. We sat like that until dawn started breaking outside, neither of us speaking, both of us pretending that proximity was just about security rather than something neither of us was ready to name. 2 weeks after the hospital, Adrian was completely healed. The wound had closed cleanly, leaving only a scar that added to the collection already marking his body. I'd removed the stitches 3 days earlier, professional and clinical, despite the fact that we'd been living in close quarters long enough for proximity to breed something beyond patient and caregiver. The rural safe house had become our temporary world. 5 acres of privacy surrounded by cameras and motion sensors that alerted Vincent's phone whenever anything larger than a deer approached the property line. We settled into routines that felt almost domestic if you ignored the armed guards rotating shifts and the strategy sessions about eliminating threats. On the 15th morning, Vincent arrived with news that changed everything. 4 men brought someone into the house, hands zip-tied behind his back, eyes wide with terror. Marcus, the accountant who'd sold information to Graham Hale. Adrian was standing by the window when they entered. He turned slowly, his expression neutral, but his eyes cold in a way I'd never seen directed at me. This was Adrian Blackwell, the leader, the man who made decisions about life and death without flinching. Marcus, he said quietly, do you know why you're here? Marcus nodded, tears already streaming down his face. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't have a choice. Everyone has choices. Adrian moved closer, circling Marcus like a predator assessing prey. You chose to betray an organization that employed you for 10 years. You chose to give Graham Hale information that led to an ambush. You chose money over loyalty. My brother, Marcus choked out. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The treatments cost $200,000. Insurance denied coverage. I didn't know where else to turn. Adrian stopped circling. You could have turned to me. I was afraid you'd say no, afraid I'd lose my job for asking. Do you know what I did 6 years ago when Rodriguez's daughter needed a kidney transplant? Adrian's voice remained level, controlled. I paid for the entire procedure. $250,000. Do you know what I did when Chen's mother needed experimental treatment for Alzheimer's? $300,000. No questions asked. Marcus's face crumbled. I didn't know. You didn't ask. Adrian gestured to Vincent. Show him the files. Vincent pulled out a tablet, displaying financial records. In the past decade, Adrian has paid for medical treatments for 17 family members of organization employees. Total expenditure, $4.2 million. Every request granted, every treatment funded. The room went silent except for Marcus's sobbing. I stood against the wall, watching this play out, understanding dawning with horrible clarity. Marcus had betrayed Adrian because he assumed the worst, when Adrian had a documented history of providing exactly what Marcus needed. Your brother, Adrian said. What's his name? David, Marcus whispered. David Marcus, 42 years old, diagnosed 8 months ago. Currently at St. Vincent's Medical Center under palliative care because active treatment was discontinued due to lack of funding. Adrian recited this from memory. He has maybe 4 months left without intervention. Please, Marcus begged. I know I don't deserve mercy. I know what I did was unforgivable. But please, if there's any way you could help David. He's innocent in all of this. Adrian looked at me then, the first time since Marcus had been brought in. Our eyes met across the room, and I saw the question there. What did I think? What would I suggest? I pushed off from the wall, moving closer. Can I speak with you privately? Adrian nodded, following me into the kitchen. Vincent maintained watch over Marcus while we stepped away from the assembled group. What are you thinking? Adrian asked quietly. I'm thinking about codes and consequences, I said. Marcus betrayed you. That requires response under your system. But he betrayed you because he was desperate and afraid, not because he's fundamentally disloyal. That's different than someone who betrays for profit or ambition. You think I should show mercy. I think mercy and justice aren't always opposites. I met his eyes steadily. You could execute him. That's traditional response. Or you could exile him, fund his brother's treatment, and demonstrate that your organization values loyalty enough to forgive desperate mistakes. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. If I show mercy, some will see it as weakness. Some will see it as evolution, as strength that doesn't require death to prove a point. You're asking me to go against decades of precedent. I'm asking you to consider whether precedent serves you, or whether you can create new standards. I stepped closer. You told me you built this organization on codes and rules. Maybe this is an opportunity to build it on something more. Adrian studied my face, and I watched him process this. Calculate angles, weigh consequences, measure risks. Finally, he nodded slowly. We returned to the main room. Marcus looked up with the expression of someone expecting execution, resigned to death. Marcus, Adrian said. Under traditional code, betrayal carries one sentence. Death. You know this. Everyone in this room knows this. Marcus nodded, closing his eyes. However, circumstances matter. Intent matters. You betrayed me out of desperation, not malice. That distinction is important. Adrian gestured to Vincent. Your brother will receive full treatment, best oncologists in the country, experimental therapies if standard treatment fails, every expense covered. Marcus's eyes flew open. What? In exchange, you leave, permanently. New identity, new city, enough money to start over somewhere far from here. You never return. You never contact anyone from the organization. You disappear completely. Break these conditions, and the mercy I'm showing today becomes the execution I'm postponing. Understand? Yes, Marcus breathed. Yes, I understand. Thank you. Thank you. Don't thank me. Thank Natalie. This was her suggestion. Marcus looked at me with gratitude that felt heavy, uncomfortable. I hadn't suggested mercy to earn thanks. I'd suggested it because killing someone's brother over desperate mistakes seemed like perpetuating cycles rather than breaking them. Vincent arranged everything with efficient precision. Within hours, Marcus had new identification, bank accounts in a different name, plane tickets to a city I wasn't told about. His brother would be transferred to a private facility under assumed name, treatment beginning immediately. After Marcus left, escorted by 2 of Vincent's men to ensure he actually departed, the house felt quieter. Adrian stood by the window again, watching afternoon light filter through trees. You changed my mind, he said without turning around. Is that good or bad? I asked, moving to stand beside him. I'm still deciding. He glanced at me. My father would have killed Marcus without hesitation. Every advisor I have would have recommended the same. But you suggested something different, and I listened. That's new territory. Does new territory frighten you? Terrify me, he admitted, because it means I'm compromising principles I've maintained for 15 years. But it also means maybe those principles needed examining. We stood in silence for a while, shoulders touching, watching shadows lengthen across the property. Vincent and the other guards maintained their positions, giving us privacy while ensuring security. Natalie, Adrian said quietly, we need to talk about what happens after. After we deal with Hale, after the immediate threat is resolved. What happens to us? The question hung between us, heavy with implications we'd been avoiding for 2 weeks. Living together had created intimacy beyond physical proximity. Conversations that lasted hours. Comfortable silences. Moments when our hands brushed and neither of us pulled away quickly. I don't know, I admitted. This situation isn't exactly normal dating circumstances. No, he agreed. But it's real. What we've built here. What I feel when you're near me. That's real regardless of how unusual the circumstances. I turned to face him fully. Adrian, you run an organization that operates outside the law. I'm a nurse who saves lives for a living. Our worlds don't align. They align right now. In this moment, maybe that's all we can ask for. And tomorrow? Next week? What happens when Lena comes back into my life full time? When I return to work? When your business requires things I can't be part of? We figure it out, Adrian said simply. Together, if you want to. The offer was there, spoken and unspoken. A relationship built on chaos and danger, tested by circumstances that would break most connections before they started. But also a relationship built on honesty, on trust developed through crisis, on attraction that went beyond physical to something deeper. I want to, I said finally. But I have conditions. Name them. Lena stays completely separate from your business. She never knows details, never meets people involved in that world. She lives normal, safe, protected, but unaware. Agreed. I keep working. Keep my independence. I'm not someone's kept woman or accessory. I'm a nurse, and that doesn't change. Agreed. And we're honest. Completely honest. You don't hide what your work involves, but you also don't make me complicit in things I can't morally accept. We find boundaries that work for both of us. Adrian considered this. That might mean there are parts of my life you can't know about. I understand. But the parts I do know about, those have to be honest. No lies between us. No lies, he confirmed. He moved closer. Close enough that I could feel his breath on my face. Can I kiss you? The question was courteous, respectful, entirely at odds with everything I'd assumed about men in his position. Yes, the kiss was gentle at first, tentative despite weeks of building tension. Then it deepened, became something hungrier, more honest. His hands cupped my face while mine found their way to his chest, feeling the steady heartbeat underneath. We broke apart slowly, foreheads resting together, breathing hard. This is probably a terrible idea, I whispered. Probably, Adrian agreed. But I haven't had a good idea since I walked into that hospital bleeding, and that turned out to save my life. 3 nights later, after strategy sessions and phone calls and planning, I was deliberately excluded from. Adrian came to the guest room where I'd been sleeping. He stood in the doorway, uncertainty making him look younger than his 35 years. Can I stay? He asked. I pulled back the covers in answer. That night, we crossed the final boundary, transforming our relationship from something undefined into something undeniable. And when dawn broke through windows, I lay beside him knowing that whatever came next, we'd face it together. The decision had been made. The consequences would follow. But for this moment, consequences could wait. 5 days after Marcus's exile, Vincent burst into the safe house with intelligence that made Adrian's entire body go rigid. I was making coffee in the kitchen when they convened in the living room. Voices low but urgent. Graham Hale is planning something big, Vincent said, spreading documents across the coffee table. Simultaneous attacks on all your properties, warehouses, legitimate businesses, even the secure location where we moved Natalie's niece. My hand froze on the coffee pot. Lena? Adrian was already moving, pulling out his phone, making rapid calls. When? Tonight. Midnight. He's coordinating with 8 different teams, planning to hit everything at once while you're isolated out here. Then we don't wait for him to come to us. Adrian's voice had gone cold, clinical. We hit him first. Vincent, mobilize everyone. I want teams positioned at Hale's headquarters within 2 hours. Boss, you're talking about open warfare. I'm talking about ending this before Lena or anyone else innocent gets hurt. Adrian looked at me. Natalie, I need you to understand what's about to happen. This won't be clean. People will die tonight. I set down the coffee pot, mind racing. Where is Lena right now? Secure bunker, 20 miles from the city. Former military installation. Reinforced concrete. Guards with serious combat experience. It's the safest location we have. I want to be there, with her. That's not safe. If Hale's teams are targeting that location, then she needs me there when they come. I cut him off. Adrian, she's 8 years old. She's been away from me for 2 weeks. If armed men attack wherever she's staying, she'll be terrified. She needs familiar faces, needs someone who can keep her calm. Adrian looked like he wanted to argue, but something in my expression stopped him. Vincent, Arrange secure transport. Natalie goes to the bunker with our 2 best protection specialists. Anyone gets within 50 feet of that location with hostile intent, they don't get closer. The next hours blurred together. Adrian's organization mobilized with military precision. Men arrived at the safe house, armed and prepared, receiving orders in clipped professional language. Vehicles departed in coordinated waves, each team assigned specific objectives. I rode in an armored SUV, with 2 men introduced only as Hayes and Reeves. Both former special forces, both carrying enough weapons to outfit a small army. The drive took 40 minutes through increasingly rural territory until we reached what looked like an abandoned industrial complex. The bunker entrance was hidden beneath a rusted metal warehouse. Underground facility, exactly as Adrian had described. Concrete corridors lit by industrial lighting, air that smelled recycled but clean. Guards stationed at regular intervals, each one alert and professional. They brought me to a residential area that looked almost normal, despite being buried under tons of earth and steel. Lena sat on a couch watching cartoons, flanked by 2 female guards who looked more like nannies than soldiers. "Aunt Nat!" She launched herself at me, small arms wrapping around my waist. "You're here. They said you were sick, but you look okay." I knelt to her level, holding her tight. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just needed some rest." "How are you doing?" "Bored," she admitted. "Mrs. Chen is nice, but she doesn't let me stay up late. And there's no windows here. It's weird." "I know, but it's temporary. Just a few more days." I smoothed her red hair, so like mine. "How about we play a game until bedtime?" We settled into comfortable routines. Card games, storytelling, normal activities in an abnormal location. Lena chattered about school, about her friends, about the soccer goal she'd scored last week. Normal childhood concerns, blessedly unaware of the violence being orchestrated to keep her safe. At 11:47 p.m., alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Hayes appeared instantly. "We have incoming. 3 vehicles, heavily armed. They're breaching the perimeter." My heart stopped. "Lena, come here." I pulled her close, her small body trembling against mine. "What's happening?" Her voice cracked with fear. "Just a drill," I lied smoothly. "Remember when your school did fire drills? Same thing. We stay here, stay quiet. Let the adults handle it." Reeves positioned himself by the door, weapon ready. Hayes checked monitors showing camera feeds from outside. I could see vehicles approaching, men exiting with rifles, advancing on the warehouse entrance. "They're well equipped," Hayes muttered. "Military-grade hardware. Hale spent serious money on this operation." Gunfire erupted outside. Not the sharp cracks from movies, but deeper, more brutal sounds. Explosions followed, shaking dust from the ceiling. Lena whimpered, burying her face against my shoulder. "It's okay," I whispered, rocking her. "We're safe. The walls are thick. Nothing can hurt us here." The firefight lasted 7 minutes. 7 minutes of gunfire, shouting, explosions. 7 minutes where I held Lena and prayed that Adrian's preparation was sufficient, that his guards were as skilled as he'd promised. Then silence. Absolute silence that felt somehow worse than the chaos. Hayes' radio crackled. "Perimeter secure. Hostiles eliminated. 0 casualties on our side." I exhaled for what felt like the first time in minutes. Lena lifted her head, tears streaking her face. "Was that a drill?" "Yes, sweetheart. Just a very realistic drill." While Lena calmed down, my phone buzzed with a text from Adrian. 3 words. "It's done. Safe." 20 miles away, Adrian stood in Graham Hale's headquarters, surveying the aftermath of his coordinated strike. Vincent had briefed him throughout, reporting that every team had executed their objectives flawlessly. Hale's operations were dismantled systematically, his men captured or eliminated, his infrastructure destroyed. Hale himself was cornered in his office, surrounded by Adrian's people, knowing he'd lost completely. Adrian gave him one chance. Surrender. Leave the city. Never return. Or die here tonight. Hale, pragmatic if nothing else, chose survival. He surrendered formally, signed agreements witnessed by neutral parties who maintained balance in their world, accepted permanent exile with the understanding that returning meant immediate death. By dawn, it was finished. Graham Hale was on a plane to somewhere far away, his organization absorbed or destroyed, his threat eliminated permanently. Adrian arrived at the bunker at 7 a.m., looking exhausted but whole. He found me in the residential area, Lena asleep on the couch beside me. "Is she okay?" he asked quietly. Scared but unhurt. "She thinks last night was a drill." I stood carefully, not wanting to wake her. "Is it really over?" "It's over. Hale is gone. His people are scattered. The threat is eliminated." Relief flooded through me so intensely my knees almost buckled. Adrian caught my arm, steadying me. "What now?" I asked. "Now you go home. Back to your apartment. Back to work. Back to normal life." Adrian hesitated. "Or as normal as it can be. And us? That depends on what you want." Adrian looked at Lena sleeping peacefully, then back at me. "I meant what I said about conditions. Lena stays separate. You keep working. We maintain boundaries. But I want this, Natalie. I want you in my life however that works." I thought about the past 3 weeks. The chaos, the danger, the impossible situation that had somehow led to something genuine. I want it too. But we do this carefully. Slowly. Lena's stability comes first. Agreed. We left the bunker that afternoon. Adrian arranged for Lena to believe we'd both been away on separate trips, coordinating our returns to make it seem natural. She was thrilled to go home, chattering about everything she'd missed. Life resumed its patterns with adjustments. I returned to St. Catherine's Hospital, explaining my absence as a family emergency that was now resolved. Dr. Morrison accepted this without pressing for details. My co-workers welcomed me back with curiosity I deflected with practiced ease. Lena returned to school, her routine uninterrupted. Guards watching from careful distances she never noticed. And Adrian became part of my life in ways that required constant negotiation. He couldn't attend school events where his face might be recognized. He couldn't be introduced to Lena as anything more than a friend until we were certain this relationship had permanence. He existed in compartments, separated from the domestic routines that defined my daily life, but in the spaces we carved out together, we built something real. Dinners after Lena was asleep. Weekends when she visited friends and we had hours alone. Phone calls during my breaks at work. Small moments that accumulated into foundation. 6 months passed. The initial chaos faded into memory, replaced by rhythms that felt almost sustainable. I still worked at the hospital, still raised Lena, still maintained the identity I'd built before Adrian Blackwell entered my life bleeding and desperate. But now there was more. Someone who understood the parts of me that needed purpose beyond caregiving. Someone who challenged my assumptions while respecting my boundaries. Someone who'd proven through actions, rather than words, that promises made were promises kept. On a Tuesday evening in spring, Adrian came to my apartment for dinner. Nothing fancy, just pasta and salad. Lena doing homework at the kitchen table while we cooked together. "Aunt Nat," Lena said, without looking up from her math worksheet. "Is Adrian your boyfriend?" The question hung in the air. We'd been careful, discreet, maintaining appropriate distance whenever she was present. But children noticed things, adults thought hidden. "Would that be okay with you?" I asked carefully. Lena considered this with the seriousness 8-year-olds brought to important questions. "I guess so. He's nice. And he helped you when you were sick." "He did," I agreed. "Then it's okay." She returned to her homework. The matter settled with childhood simplicity. Adrian caught my eye across the kitchen. A question there. I nodded slightly. Permission granted. Boundaries adjusted. Life evolving. After dinner, after Lena was asleep, Adrian and I sat on the couch with wine and comfortable silence. Outside, the city continued its endless motion. Inside, we'd created something that felt like peace. "I never expected this," Adrian said quietly. "Never expected that getting shot would lead to the best thing in my life. That's a terrible meet-cute story. But honest." He took my hand, thumb tracing circles on my palm. "Thank you for taking a chance on someone you had every reason to fear. Thank you for being worth the risk." We sat like that until midnight, talking about everything and nothing, planning futures that involved school pickups and business meetings, soccer games and security briefings, the impossible balance of two worlds that somehow coexisted. 3 weeks earlier, I'd been hiding a dying stranger in a hospital basement, making a choice that seemed insane in its risk. Now I understood that sometimes the insane choices were the ones that led exactly where you needed to be. Adrian Blackwell had entered my life through chaos. He stayed through choice. And whatever came next, we'd face it the way we'd faced everything else, together.